Now, in the Jewish, Jewish scholars and pretty much most of the Western Church do not consider the Book of Jubilees as canonical. Nevertheless, Beta Israel and the Ethiopian Church, they consider the Book of Jubilees as canonical. The Book of Jubilees is also called the Little Genesis. I put below that one reason this book may have been removed is because it puts evolutionary arguments to bed. There's a lot of information in there that just puts, in my opinion, evolutionary arguments to bed. So we've got a dichotomy, we've got a conflict of ideas, we've got the Western European world saying that the book is not to be considered as inspired, and then on the flip side of that, we've got the Eastern world, or the other side of the coin, the other side of the spectrum, and they're saying that it should be considered canonical. And you know how we've got Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John as our bread and butter in the King James? Well, Jubilees is a part of the bread and butter in the Ethiopian church and community. So we also know that in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, it says to prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. Most of us are very lazy at this particular part when it comes to proving all things. We like to idolize a person or an individual, and if they say yay, we say yay. If they say jump, we say how high. If they say run, we say how fast. But we don't personally get involved ourselves because of time constraints, public opinion, yada yada yada. So I'm encouraging all to prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. Now let's have a little background, or let's get a bit of a background story behind the Book of Jubilees and why the Book of Jubilees was removed. So, how did the early Christians view Jubilees? There is no official record of Pharisaic or rabbinic sources, and was among several books that the Sanhedrin and Rabbi Akiva left out of the canon. Make a note of that. Rabbi Akiva left out of the canon. They first established in the late 1st century. Many of the traditions which Jubilees includes for the first time are echoed in later Jewish sources, including some 12th century Midrashim, which may have had access to a Hebrew copy. Sole exception within Judaism, so-called Judaism, is the Beta Israel Jews, formerly of Ethiopia, regard the G's texts as canonical. Now, it appears that the early Christian writers held the Book of Jubilees in high regard, as many of them cited and alluded to Jubilees in their writing. Now, let's look at who this guy is. So the book was removed. So who omitted the Book of Jubilees? It was according to this source, it was a guy by the name of Rabbi Akiva. And how did the early Christians view the Book of Jubilees? They held it in high regard. Many made references to it. So let's have a look at this interesting guy. So his name, Rabbi Akiva, and this is a 16th century visual illustration of what he could have looked like, yada yada yada. So he was born Akiva ben Yosef, died 135 CE, Caesarea, Judea, Tiberias, Galilee was his burial place. Very interesting. Okay, so this is the guy who said, yay, it's not canonical. So make a note of that. Rabbi Akiva. Now, who was Rabbi Akiva? Who was Rabbi Akiva? Interesting. Akiva ben Yosef. also known as Rabbi Akiva, was a leading Jewish scholar and, listen to the keyword, sage. Now in the Bible, I don't really come across this word sage, you know. I probably should have put the clip in so that we can hear what the people. You know what? Nah. Should I put it in? I don't know. I'll leave it. We've saw the Harry Rosenberg clip several times now, where he says, admittedly, that at the peak of the destroying of Jerusalem, there was a lot of Roman converts who took on the prerogatives or created a thing called Judaism. Yeah? They created a system of worship called Judaism. But we've seen that clip many a times, so I'm just going to skate over that. So let's reread. Akiva ben Yosef, also known as Rabbi Akiva, was a leading Jewish scholar and sage. At Tana of the latter part of the 1st century and beginning of the 2nd century, Rabbi Akiva was a leading contributor to the Mishnah and to the Midrash and to the Halakha. He is also sometimes credited with redacting Abraham's version of the Sefer Yetzirah. One of the central, so he's sometimes credited with redacting that, and one of the central texts of Jewish mysticism. He is referred to in the Talmud, as Josh la Hakahim, chief of the sages. He was executed by the Romans in the aftermath of Bar Kokhba revolt. So, who is he? We've just read about him. What was he known as? The chief of sages. Now, we don't see this vernacular sages in the canon. This was added at a particular point in time during a particular infiltration and bastardization of this thing called Judaism. But we've looked at it, not going to get into it. Let's continue. Okay, now, how is Rabbi Akiva remembered? Rebbe Akiva's modern day tomb is located in Tiberias, interesting. Annually, on the night of Lag Baomer, Boston, Chazadim, and local residents gather at the tomb of Rebbe Akiva. Make a mental note of this, because this is going to be crucial to the rest of the study at a certain part. To light a bonfire, a tradition reinstated by Bostoner Rebbe, or Rebbe, in 1983. So, just giving you a bit of the background behind the people who said you shouldn't read certain books and told you not to read certain books because this, that, and the other. When you check their resume, you find a lot of things on the CV. Okay, so let's continue. So, what did I want to highlight? Okay, he is referred to in the Talmud as Rosh la Hakamim, which is the chief of the sages. Make a mental note of that very quickly. Yeah, so this is the guy who said, no, that can't be in the canon. Nevertheless, the Ethiopian community, which predates this particular community that came in at, a particular time that we looked at, they said, yeah, it's validated, yada, yada, yada. All right, boom. He's also mentioned in the Talmud as the chief of sages. Now let's see what the Talmud is about, just on a basic level. I'm not going to get too much into the Talmud because it's a very, let's just forget it. Let's just look at what I'm going to show. So, what does the Talmud teach about Yeshua? What does the Talmud teach about Yeshua? Now, there's another sage that's highly regarded in the Talmud called Onkelos. If you watch that Harry Rosenberg clip that many of you guys have watched, he makes reference to Onkelos as being a mighty sage, that came in during the Roman occupation of Israel, yada, yada, yada. Yeah? So anyway, Onkelos said to him, what is the punishment of that man in the next world? Jesus, quote unquote. So Jesus says to him now, he is punished with boiling excrement. Excrement for the 12 o'clock crowd is poo or feces. As the master said, I don't know who this master is, anyone who mocks the words of the sages will be sentenced to boiling excrement. I haven't read that in the Bible saying that anything about boiling excrement, but according to the sages, it's a sentence. Interesting. When you research this character Onkelos, it says he was a Roman national who converted to Judaism in the Tanaic times. So that being said, of the same community which disregard Jubilees, regard the Talmud as authoritative, and some esteem the Book of Sohar, along with the Noahide laws, and some even regard the Kabbalah, or these dark mysticism, esoterical, occultish books. And they're the ones who told you can't read certain books that are canonical. The irony. And let's not forget, most people that go to these Christian so-called theology schools or Protestant Catholic schools, they all get their information filtered to them by a certain particular type of people. But I digress. So, chapter 1, verse 1 of the book of Jubilees. So I'll read the outline. It says, Moses receives the tables of law and instructions on past and future history, which he is to inscribe in a book, and then the apostasy of Israel, captivity of Israel and Judah, return of Judah, rebuilding of the temple, Moses' prayer for Israel, God promises to redeem and dwell with them, Moses bidden to write down the future history of the world, and the angel to write down the law. And the angel takes the heavenly chronological tablets to dictate therefrom to Moses. So that's giving you subheadings of what the first chapter is all about. Yeah? But the purpose of today's study, we're just going to look at chapter 1, and we're going to add precepts from other parts of the Bible to validate the book of Jubilees. Okay, so verse 1. And it came to pass in the first year of the Exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt in the 3rd month of the 16th day of the month, that Yah spake to Moses, or Moshe, saying, Come up to me on the mount, and I will give thee 2 tables of stone of the law and of the commandment which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. So, that's verse 1 of chapter 1. Nothing scary, nothing to make you go, oh, hey. Just straight up, that's just, don't get triggered. It's a new book. Some people might get, well, it's not even a new book. People get scared when they introduce the new things. Go figure. But let's go. Okay. Next slide. Okay, next slide, sorry. Okay, so, interesting. When was Moshe, or Moses, called to receive Yah's revelation? Still in chapter 1 of Jubilees. And when Moshe went up to the Mount of Yah, and the glory of the Lord abode on Mount Sinai, and a cloud overshadowed it 6 days, and he called to Moses on the 7th day, out of the midst of the cloud, and the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a flaming fire on top of the mount. And Moses was on the mount 40 days and 40 nights, and Yah taught him the earlier and the latter history of the division of all the days of the law and of the testimony. When was Moshe called to receive Yah's revelation? And he called to Moses on the 7th day. Okay. When was Yochanan, or John? When did he get his revelation in Patmos? Revelation 1 verse 10. I was in the spirit on the Lord's day, and and heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet, saying, I am the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, and what thou seest write in a book, and send it to the 7 churches which are in Asia, Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, and Thyatira, and Sardis, and Philadelphia, and unto Laodicea. So interestingly, Moses was called up on the 7th day, and John, he got his revelation also on the 7th day. My wife asked me a random question today when we went on our little walk, and she's like, do you think the Most High is going to come back on the Sabbath? And I was like, I don't know. For one, like, I'm not setting no times or dates like that. But you know, we just having a little general conversation. And she's like, oh, do you think the Most High is coming back on the Sabbath? And I was like, no, because he should be resting. You know, like, it should be a day off, you know? But that's just our little random conversations that we have. But yeah, interestingly though, Moses got his revelation on the Sabbath. And also, John, the younger, he got his revelation also on the Sabbath. Okay. History was written. Why? Jubilees 1:5-6. And he said, incline thine heart to every word which I shall speak to thee on this mount, and write them in a book, in order that their generations may see how I have not forsaken them for all the good, for all the evil which they have wrought in transgressing the covenant which I established between me and thee for their generations this day on Mount Sinai. And thus it will come to pass, when all these things come upon them, that they will recognize that I am more righteous than they in all their judgments and in all their actions, and they will recognize that I have been truly with them. So history is written as a lesson book for us, but it's also to remind us where we've strayed away in the past, collectively, ancestrally, from the Most High, so that we're not puffed up with who we are or what we're about, but we stay humble also. A lot of the times people want to get into the history, get into the mechanisms of finding out who they are, and oftentimes, because it's been hidden from us and taken away from us, the truth can kind of give us a haughty, obnoxious spirit. But it was written, incidentally, to remind us that of our history, of where we've come from and what we've done, you know? But like I said, our history has been omitted by people randomly and excluded by people randomly, you know? So we don't even know if we're making the same mistakes that we made in the past, because our history is not there for us, you know, to see. Especially when you read the book of Maccabees, it gives you an interesting breakdown of a bit of history. It says, in those days, this is during the Grecian occupation of Israel, when a lot of the Greeks became Hellenized. Contemporary word for that would be Westernized or Americanized or Europeanized or Anglophiles or Americanphiles or whatever word you want to use. But that was kind of the mindset, yeah? So in those days, went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded few, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. Now, why did I want to do this? For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So there was all about coming together, you know? What did Malcolm X say? Not Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. What did he say? I've brought my people into a burning house. But anyway, I digress. For since we departed from them, we've had much sorrow. So they were saying, you know what? We need to become one with those around us so that they don't pound us and hound us, etc., etc. When the Most High wanted his people to separate from them and to be a light unto them. Okay, so next slide. Oh, to answer that question, sorry, I don't know if I answered it. Why was history written? It was written so that we would have a record of what took place in the past and would be able to learn from it and steer away from where we went wrong previously. Okay, next slide. What was Israel known as? So what was Israel known as? First Jubilees, chapter 1 of Jubilees, verse 7 to verse 8. And do thou write for thyself all these words which I declare unto thee this day. For I know their rebellion and their stiff neck, before I bring them into the land which I swear to their fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, Unto your seed will I give a land flowing with milk and honey. So you already knew, actually let me finish, and they will eat and be satisfied, and they will turn to strange gods, to gods which cannot deliver them from aught of their tribulation, and this witness shall be heard for a witness against them, for they will forget all my commandments, even all that I command them, and they will walk after the Gentiles, and after their uncleanness, and after their shame, and will serve their gods, and these will prove unto them an offense, and a tribulation, and an affliction, and a snare. Wow. Look how many ands are in that one little verse. He says, boy. All right. And they will walk after the Gentiles, and after their uncleanness, and after their shame, and will serve their gods, and these will prove unto them an offense, and a tribulation, and an affliction, and a snare. So just by following, you end up going down a spiral, you know? One thing leads on to another. What was Israel known as though? They were known as a rebellious and a stiff-necked people. Rebellious and stiff-necked. You could smack them with all the truth in the face and they still want to fill in the blank. You could tell them every, stuff that's good for them, health, whatever, and they'll reject it, or they'll argue the toss. My nan ate pork, so why can't I eat pork? Or whatever the case may be, But that's the mind state, But when you read that verse 8, man, and you see so many and, and this and that and this and that and this and that, and it says, and will serve their gods. But guess what it says? They're going to serve their gods, and these will prove unto them an offense, and a tribulation, and an affliction, and a snare, Why? We'll break that down another time, another day. Let's go. So, Jubilees 1, 9, 10 to 11. Seeing if I'm good for time. Yeah, we're good for time. Okay. And, another and, we're still dealing with the ands. And many, no, let's read it again. And some will perish. No, let's read it again. And few will perish. No. And many will perish. And they will be taken captive and will fall into the hands of the enemy, because they have forsaken my ordinances, my commandments, and the festivals of my covenant, and my Sabbaths, and my holy place, which I have hallowed for myself in the midst, and my tabernacle, and my sanctuary, which I hallowed for myself in the midst of the land, that I should set my name upon it, and that it should dwell there. And they will make to themselves high places, and groves and graven images, and they will worship each his own graven image, so as to go astray, and they will sacrifice their children to demons and to all the works of the error of their hearts. And I will send witnesses unto them, that I may witness against them. But they will not hear, and will slay the witnesses also. And they will persecute those who seek the law, and they will abrogate and change everything so as to work evil before my eyes. So when you look at that itinerary, there's so many ands, you know. It's a madness. It really is. So just by breaking one precept or stepping away from one precept, you go on a, like I said, a downward spiral. Now, they will begin to worship what or who? He says, and they will begin to make themselves high places, groves, and graven images. Those three were kind of synonymous, you know, one in the same. And it says they will even start to worship his own graven image. Yeah. And this is where we get the precept of men should be lovers of their own selves, you know, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. 2 Timothy 3 verse 2, you know. And you got a, I don't know what, okay, is that a so-called Father Ted, Father John at the bottom with his camera. I think he's got his little wedding ring, vicar collar, and I think he's got a pint of beer and he's doing a little selfie. In the top as well, you've got, I think it's one of the Hindu gods, probably Ganesh or Karesh or Dipesh or something like that. And these guys are holding on to it for a festival. But I don't know if you're aware of this guy. This guy here is called Narsicus. Is it Narsicus? Could be wrong actually. Oh yeah, it's Narsicus. Yeah, I could be wrong. Been a long time since I looked at the history, the Greek mythology surrounding this particular guy. But if memory serves me correct, his name's Narsicus. And based on Greek mythology, Narsicus was just walking around one day, and he tripped up, or you know, he came to notice himself in the reflection of the water, and he fell in love with his own reflection, that he drowned in the water. And that's where we get the phrase or the terminology narcissistic, you know. So when it says men will be lovers of themselves, that's a very narcissistic trait. Yeah, and we're going to start breaking down this graven image. And what is graven image worship? Because there seems to be a bit of confusion, and this is where I said there's so many ways to go at unearthing this and breaking it down, you know. Because there's an element of, there's a thin line between truth and error. So we're going to try and look at this thing, because I hear a lot of arguments that are very dogmatic, and then I hear arguments that are very liberal, you know. So hopefully what we're going to do is look at, and this part of the study is going to start to get interactive following the next slide. It's going to be a bit, you know, bit of interaction for that one particular slide. It'll make sense as we advance. Okay, so anyway, what is forbidden? Deuteronomy Deuteronomy chapter 4, 15 to verse 20. The reason we're going here is because we just looked at here in Jubilees, they will make themselves high places, groves, and graven images, and they will worship each his own graven image, so as to go astray, and they will sacrifice children to demons and all the works of their error of their hearts. So that's why we're going to this, because it's dealing with the same precept of idolatry, graven images, etc. Okay, so what is forbidden? Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image. The similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth, unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven should be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. But the Lord hath taken you and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of inheritance, as ye are this day. So in the commandments it says, don't worship any graven images. Don't worship any graven images. Actually, let me put the commandment in so we can see that too. Thought I had it in here. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is expounding, that particular verse that we just read is expounding on Exodus 24 to 25. Yeah, it's expounding on that. Got a serious headache at the moment. That's why I'm kind of just monotone, you know. Yeah, very headache, you know. All right, boom. Let me throw this thing in. Okay. So that's it's kind of expounding on the commandment that we find about imagery or not making any images. Yeah, but like I said, sometimes there's a one-sided critique that's very dogmatic and another side that's very liberal. So on the next slide, it's going to get a bit interactive. I want you guys to talk to me and tell me what you guys think. Anyway, so boom. So Exodus 20 verse 4, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not, listen, bow down thyself to them, so don't bow down to them, nor serve them, don't serve them, for I am the Lord thy God, I'm a jealous God, visiting iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. So we're not supposed to bow down to them, to serve them, etc. Yeah, that's pretty plain. Okay. Then it's going to tell you what it means, you know, when it says up above and the earth beneath, etc. So it says, going back to the original verse that we was looking at, take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves. All right, let's forget that 1 second. Lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female. Okay, so we can't make any figure of male or female. Interesting. The likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air. So we can't make any bird. Okay. The likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. Okay, so no fish. Okay. And now, same thing, now it's telling you why. So this is the conclusion of the prohibition. So there you have your prohibitions. For example, turn off the lights when you go in, turn off the light when you come out the bathroom. Why? To save electric, you know? Or put on your seatbelt when you go in the car. Why? To protect you in an accident. Okay, so now this is the explanation behind the prohibition. Lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, thou shalt be driven to worship them and to serve them, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all the nations under the whole heaven. So it's linking as well the celestial bodies too, so the sun, the moon, the stars, along with everything else that we just previously mentioned, you know. I'm saying this for a reason, because the next slide, I want you guys to interact with me. So now, interestingly, in the Egyptian community, cats were highly regarded to the extent where cats were almost deified. Well, not almost, they were deified, you know, the Sphinx and all these other strange items or animals that were deified. Also, tombs and monuments of fallen pharaohs were also erected, and people would pay homage to these graven images. Now, Over to you guys. Over to you guys. Over to you guys. Let's see where you guys are at, because there's going to be very different responses. So let's see what everyone's on. Okay, so which one of these is idolatry, if any? So which one of these is idolatry? We've just read, thou shalt not make any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above or the earth beneath or that is in the water under the earth. So I've got my little book here of the blue whale. That's something that's in the sea. I got my little book here of birds, National Geographical. I got my book here of peekaboo. I got my history book here. I've got my human biology book that I need to learn about human biology. I've got my ABC chart. You know, that helps kids learn the ABCs. Which one of these is idolatry, if any at all? Wow, I'm kind of okay. Let's see what people are saying. Okay, I'm just reading the chat feeds to see what you guys are saying. Wow, everyone's saying, oh, you know. Okay, Michael. Michael's saying none. Okay. Otai Africa Rice saying none of them. Okay. Tammy saying none. Boy, this is why we need to be of one accord, you know. This is why we need to be of one accord, you know. Because I'm probably gonna get booed. But okay. I have to ask these questions, these open questions, you know. Because like I said, there's the dogmatic crowd and there's the liberal crowd. The dogmatic crowd says, anything! Ah! Yeah? And the liberal crowd says, no! So then you got these two opposing views. Yeah? So, for example, none, they are not graven. That's what Olu Tag says. A lot of people are saying they are, and a lot of people are saying none. This is why it's good to have perspective. It's good to have context. And it's good to have, it's just good to, you know what it is? The Bible says, the letter of the law killeth, yeah, but with the spirit there is life. I might have misquoted that, so let me find that later on in the study. Actually, no, let me try it now while you guys are still answering that question. So many of us, we reference the law without the spirit behind the law. Now, this is not to minimize or trivialize the commandments, Yah forbid. But that's how many of us deal with issues. So, for example, on Sabbath now, you know, if your next door neighbor broke down in their car, some people would be like, well, the Bible says you shouldn't go out and do this because it's the holy day of the Lord, which it is. It's the holy day of Yahuwah. If your neighbor's broken down next to you, you're not gonna help the brother. Or if someone is in dire straits, you're not gonna help the brother. Or are you gonna say you're gonna show the letter of the law and not the spirit? Okay. So anyway, let me go through these things and let me find out what you guys think is idolatry, if there is any at all. Okay, so let's start with, what should we start with? Let's start with this alphabet thing. So if you came into my house now and you saw this on my wall for one of my children to learn their alphabet, yeah? It's got A for apple, B for bee, C for a cat, and D for a dog, E for elephant, F for a frog. I just made that up. But alright, if you saw that on the wall, would you like throw would you throw me an uppercut and sprinkle some holy water on me and say, nah, that's idolatry? Or would you say isn't idolatry? So someone would say yes. Carla would say yes. Okay. So I'm gonna say, all right. I'll tell you what we're gonna use scriptures as well, but it's good to see what people have to say, you know, because it's just good to see. It's just good to see. All right. So this history book, I've just brought a book recently as well called my wife brought it me. It's When the Rocks Cry Out, and it's got a picture of a rock. Now, should I burn this book because there's a picture of a rock as a front cover of this book? Should I burn this book and say, boy, doppy, what or what? Anyway, boom. All right, next one. All right, so this book here, yeah. Should I is that idolatry? If anything at all? Okay. All right. So I'm a medical student and I need to have a book. I'm not really. It's just as an example before people say, etc. etc. I'm a medical student and I've got this book for my course. Yeah. And I need to learn about the anatomy, the capillaries, autonomy, yada yada, bada bada bada. Yeah. And I get this book. Now, do I burn this book and say, boy, graven image, or do I say, nah, it's you know, where do we stand on that? So let me see what people are saying on that. Because this is where people go a bit crazy in they go crazy mode, you know. But all right, let me hold that down. Let me just hold that down. So all right, boom. This is why it's good to ask. It's really good to ask questions, you know. You know, Uncle Malcolm X, yeah, he was quite that was his forte, always asking questions. But above Malcolm X, Yeshua was always asking questions, you know, because there was always very much different classes of people, and he was always trying to deal with the issues that they were currently facing. All right, boom. So your children comes back from school. Your child, little John, Timothy, Emma, Susie, Alicia, Shanika, Chloe, Pocahontas, comes back from school, and I have this book here called The Very Hungry Caterpillar, teaching them about caterpillars and metamorphism and all this kind of stuff here. Now, do you say, boy, bonfire, idolatry? Or do you say, you can get a pass? Just interested in what people have to say. After I had a bit of humor, so I don't get stoned, you know? People will stone you and kill you. But all right, boom. Okay. So what we saying, man, is the very hungry caterpillar gonna get you dealt with for being idolatrous, or is it just a book? Is it a book? Is it gonna get man thrown in a lake of fire? I just want to ask, like, you know. And I respect everyone's opinion too. We don't always have to agree. It's good to have a bit of, transparency, you know. All right. So next book, let's look at this one here. Is this book with a man's eye, ear, hand, foot, leg muscle, nose, ear? Is that gonna be problematic? Would that be problematic? I'm a medical student or whatever. Is that gonna get me in hot water? Exactly. Well, okay. Different views. That's cool. So that's that one. All right then. Lastly, and then we're gonna move on from this. This is the only part of trivia that's in the study. But like I said, it's good to find out where people are at, because you'll be surprised, you know. If you don't ask questions, you'll just assume that everyone is, has the same sort of perspective until you meet a certain crowd or this, that, and the other. All right, so boom, baby peekaboo. When you read through the book and then the things just stick at you, just poke out. All these images poke out at you, 3-dimensional images that poke out of the book. Yeah? Is that gonna get someone in hot water? Is that idolatry? Anyone there? Is that gonna get me in hot water? It might, I don't know. Okay, yeah. By God's grace, I have another child, yeah, and I call him whatever I call him, or I call her whatever I call her, and then one of you, brethren or sistren, send me this book called Baby Peekaboo, yeah, or whatever. Just send me a book in it. And what do I do now? Could you send me this book and there's an image? Because remember we read it says no image of man or woman, least you, what does it say? Lest you corrupt yourself, make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, Deuteronomy 4 verse 16. So you've sent me this, this peekaboo book, but it's got an image of a cat on there. Wow, I didn't see the cat. And it's got an image of a baby. Now, we're going to skip this slide very quickly, well, very shortly. But like I said, it's good to ask questions and that. So please don't be offended. Please don't be triggered or oversensitive, because a lot of people are so sensitive now. But yeah, what's your verdict on that? And then we're gonna go forward. Okay, so I'll answer this question. All right. Which one of these books is idolatry, if any? Now, I would say, listen, I would say, by Yah's grace, all of those books can be idolatry. The key word is can be, if you want them to be idolatry. Equally, those books are not idolatry. It can be and it cannot be. Like, for example, when you read, like I said, is it Proverbs? When Uncle Solomon says, answer a fool like this and you'll be a fool. Don't answer a fool and he's wise in his own eyes. The Hebrew mindset was never like yes or no when it came to certain things. It would be dependent on the circumstances and the situation. So if you came into my house and let's just say I had baby peekaboo, yeah, and because you brought it for my first son or my first daughter or whatever the case may be, and I got it in a gold frame and I put it on top of the highest, like in Islam, they put the books in the highest place in the room to show reverence, and I put it in a gold plate. I got, I don't know, I put it in a case, in a cabinet of you know what I'm saying? You just over exaggerated the book, yeah, and then it turned into you worshipping the book because this is the first book for your first child from your first best friend who you met at your first kinder. You know what I'm saying? And you over idolize and over complicate something so simple and innocent as baby peekaboo, then it can have the capacity to turn into idolatry. But in and of itself, it's not idolatry. Yeah? Likewise with every other source that's there, let's just say your granddad gave you this book on the anatomy and Yah forbid he passed away, and then you do the same thing, you idolize it, you every day you must wipe the book and gloss the book and this, that and the other. Then something as innocent as this depiction of the anatomy could turn into idolatry. But in and of itself, come on man, it's not idolatry. And it goes to every other book that's on there too, so that's what we need to there's the letter of the law, but there's a spirit behind the law also, and without that we just turn a bit doolally and a bit crazy, for want of a better word. But yeah, everyone's right and everyone's wrong, but everyone's wrong and everyone's right. Not playing on words, not trying to be a soothsayer or anything like that. I'm just saying everything has the capacity to be idolized if you choose for it to be idolized. But in and of itself, these are just books, So if your son comes home, who's a medical student with a medical book, and you see a human skeleton, don't freak out and say, why? Idolatry, and then go crazy and then try, beat him up with a Dutch pot. Just allow him. Conversely, if somebody buys your daughter, if somebody buys your daughter or son or whatever a book called Baby Peekaboo, it does, it's just a book, innit? But if you're gonna idolize it, romanticize it, then there's an issue, there's a definite issue. All right then. So glad we cleared up that to a degree. But guess what? We're gonna go even deeper on this topic of idolatry because it's an area that needs to be kind of clarified even more so. You know, let's look at it further on because the principle as well was not to worship, not to bow down, not to let's just relook at what it says. Um, so it says, lest you're driven to worship them, to serve them, which the Lord via have divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. That's Deuteronomy 4, verse 19. And then it says in Exodus 20, verse 5, it says not to make them, because, what does it say? Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them or serve them. Yeah, so you're not supposed to bow down to them in reverence. No, it says when Yeshua comes, every knee will bow. You're not supposed to be bowing down to these inanimate objects, and you're not supposed to be serving them. Could you imagine how okay, you're watching TV, and we'll get to that point after, because you're going to see how when you have a certain mindset, it can kind of just become ridiculous. But like I said, anything can be idolized or become a graven image if you make it a graven image. Okay. So, what is idolatry though, according to Uncle Solomon? So, what is idolatry according to Uncle Solomon? So, Wisdom of Solomon 14 verse 15. For a father afflicted with untimely mourning, when he have made an image of his son, soon taken away, now honored him as a god, which was then a dead man, and delivered to those that were under him ceremonies and sacrifices. Yeah? So idolatry, according to Solomon, was trying to immortalize a lost one, or a lost child, or a lost family member. When I say lost, I mean a dead family member. Yeah. And interestingly, idolatry can be a springboard or a gateway, to other things too. So, for example, he says here, a father afflicted with untimely mourning, yes, so somebody dies unexpectedly, when he have made an image of his child soon taken away. So he makes a placard or something decorative of the child soon taken away. Then he honors that same placard or picture or image as a god. Then he goes to the extent of trying to get everybody to pay homage to that image of that dead person. And we know the papacy with Seja Borgia made him after his dead son's Borgia or whatever his name is. And we know the history. We know that, And then in Catholicism especially, you have so-called Yeshua, commonly called Jesus, and he's often in the Catholic Church placed on the cross to symbolize that he's still dead, because technically, or not technically, Yeshua is risen, so he's no longer on the cross. So when you see an image of something that is supposed to be representative of Jesus on the cross, it's kind of like blasphemy in a way. Okay, and then from there, generally, when somebody dies, they also graven themselves. They'll get a tattoo. Rest in peace, Brother Johnson, or rest in peace, Sister Shosho. Or like this guy's got down here, a tattoo for his mom. And we know you're not supposed to put tattoos on yourself. So one thing tends to lead to another. But let's see what else Uncle Solomon has to say on the issue of idolatry and graven images, because he goes very deep, Oh, and we're going to go back to the book of Jubilees. So, this is following on actually, so that we're on the same page from this verse here. So this verse that I just read, this is the continuation of that verse. So let me just read it again. For a father afflicted with untimely mourning, when he had made an image of his son soon taken away, now honored him as a god, which was then a dead man, and delivered to those that were under him ceremonies and sacrifices. Thus, listen, thus in the process, so not immediately, but in the process of time, an ungodly custom grown strong was kept as a law. Let's read that again. Thus in the process of time, an ungodly custom grown strong was kept as a law. And graven images were worshipped by the commandment of kings. It's gonna start striking close. It's gonna strike close to home soon, you know. When Solomon breaks down this whole graven images, he goes in a bit further. Alright, so he says, whom men could not honor in presence, because they died, because they dwelt far off, logistically too far. They took the counterfeit. Wow. They took the counterfeit of his visage from far and made an express image of a king whom they honored, to the end by that by their forwardness they might flatter him that was absent as if he was present. Also, the singular diligence of the artificer did help to set forward the ignorant to more superstition. Woo! Breaking that down is going to be fun. Breaking this down is going to be fun. Okay, so listen up to what he's saying. He's saying, you see these? All right. Let's give the example first. Now let's break it down. Thus, in the process of time. Yeah, so it wasn't immediately. Like we said earlier, anything can be idolatry if you make it into an idol. Yeah, but if you don't make it into an idol, it's not an idol. But it's a thin line between idolatry and not idolatry, if that makes sense. So he says here, thus in the process of time, an ungodly custom grown strong was kept as a law, and the graven images were worshipped by the commandments of kings. Okay. Example. There's a car crash. Yeah? Next to where the car crash took place, the person who was involved in the car crash died. But next to that car crash, there was a massive tree, a very iconic tree, just adjacent to where the incident took place. Now to immortalize or to create a memory of that deceased person, the family have the good idea, of getting his photo, from when he was 10, 12, 25, 50, 30. And they get that image of that son and they stick that son next to that tree. Then some of his family and friends say, you know what, let's get some flowers as well, just for that tree. Because that tree is now representative of the incident. Then the opportunist then might fallacy or might create false accounts of that tree. So they'll say, yo, I walked past that tree yesterday and guess what? What? The tree was speaking. You know what the tree said? What? The tree said your son's name, Yeah. The tree said Eric. Yeah. Then what happens? There's profit. Why? There's tourism. People want to see the magical tree that can say Eric. There is money in death. Most people sell more posthumously. So most people, when they die, sell more records, have a bigger impact posthumously than when they're alive. Like Kobe Bryant, is it Kobe Bryant, sorry. Whoever owned him is probably making a shed load of him posthumously. People then deify the place or the item as a deity or as a lucky charm. So for example, like I said, if you look at the screen, you see a statue, a graven image of it's supposed to be Mary, yeah? And Mary is supposed to be bleeding from the eyes. Now, I'm not a detective or a son of a detective or any way involved in that work. But nevertheless, if you look at her eyes, to me, it looks like somebody's blatantly smeared something down her eyes in sort of a straight formation. Now, when we read verse 18 of verse 14, it says also the singular diligence of the artificer, so those who make the product, did help to set forward the ignorant to more superstition. So you have your person who makes the model, he gets paid. Then he fabricates a story. And interestingly, in the Grecian time, I was saying to my wife earlier, they used to have these elaborate statues of deity, and the priesthood would sneak behind the statue or have ways where they could, like holes in the statue that they could look through. So when devotees would come to pay homage to the statue, they could, there was mechanisms too that they could move the statue's arm to say thank you, or there were speech holes embedded in the statue where they could mumble stuff or say stuff to give the impression that the statue was alive and that the statue had life. Yeah? So this is just Solomon letting you in on how graven images then become worshipped and idolized and so on and so forth, And it says, who men could not honor in presence, being dwelt afar, they took a counterfeit of their image from far, and made an express image of a king, whom they honored to the end by their forwardness, that they might flatter him, but was absent as if he were present. So they did it for flattery, they did it for money, they did it for deception, and they did it because they were being self-serving, So I just thought I'd make you see that, because he goes into it quite heavy, and he's got another verse too, where he goes into it even more. We're still on Jubilees. I just said we're taking a short diversion away momentarily, and then we're going to go back onto Jubilees. Okay. Alright, this is what I want next. For he peradventure, willing to please one in authority, forced all his skill to make the resemblance of the best fashion. This reminds me of the Renaissance, when everyone was doing their paintings, Michelangelo and all this kind of stuff, and they were making their best, doing their best skill, doing their best work, to please the one in authority. And so the multitude, allured by the grace of the work, listen. I know I got a headache and it's very monotone right now, but please listen. And so the multitude, allured by the grace of the work, took him now for a god, which a little before was but honored. And this was an occasion to deceive the world, for men serving either calamity or tyranny did ascribe unto stones and stocks the incommunicable name. All right, let me break that down. So he's saying you had these people that were willing to do these sculptures, these graven images to please the people in authority. Okay, let's bring it closer to home. So let's just say, you're living during the time of President Lincoln, yeah? And he's dead now, yeah? But you're like, yo, I want to do a sculptor. I want to make a graven image for President Lincoln, yeah? Because you want to please those who are in authority, whatever. Might not be the best example, but you're doing it to please those in authority, yeah? And you do such a good job, yeah, by your work that you now become deified too. Because if the statue is a god and you made the statue, then by default you should be a god too. That's what verse 20 is talking about. And then verse 21 is saying that they deceived the world, for men serving the calamity or tyranny would ascribe it to the stones, to the stocks, or to the name. Yeah. So going back to the tree example that I said earlier with this tree, and people say, oh, you know, when they walk past the tree, they say, oh, it's Eric's tree. The tree can say Eric. Now let's just say something catastrophic went wrong in this particular neighborhood. Yeah, the people then would contribute it to the tree and say, oh, it's because we've upset Eric's tree. You know, you upset Eric's tree. So, you know, okay, a dog weed on Eric's tree and Eric got upset, and they would contribute that whatever took place, that catastrophe to the tree, if that makes sense. Yeah. So when it says, and this was an occasion to deceive the world, for men serving either calamity or tyranny did ascribe it unto stones and to stocks and incommunicable names. You know. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting when we look at idolatry from what Uncle Solomon's coming with. He's dealing with it from this perspective. Lastly, very quickly on this one, the graven images also leads to ancestor worship or seeking out of mediums or clairvoyances, you know, to communicate with the dead on behalf of the living. You know, Isaiah 8:19, and when they shall say unto you, seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and that mutter, should not a people seek unto their God for the living to the dead? You know, so that's another thing that happens too. People make graven images of grandma, granddad, the cat, the dog, the postman, and then they start worshipping these images. You know, he's serving the image food. Look, the man is serving his ancestors food. Yeah. And he probably bowed down not too long ago. And bow down doesn't necessarily, you don't have to necessarily bow down to be worshipping an image. It can be the reverence that you put onto the image. Yeah. But we see there clearly where graven image worship can lead to. And we see that on this one here is a process of time, an ungodly custom, you know. And it's so easy to become snared by that, especially if you don't know the Most High and you lose a loved one. It's so easy for you to seek out these demonic sources to try to get closure, you know? And then you end up in a hornet's nest of deception and of falsehood. Okay, so swiftly moving on from there. Oh yeah, the biggest projector of moving images now is the television. Many folks will lambast other religions for obvious idolatry, but we miss those that are close to home. Can you go a day without this? If not, why? There is a reason this is called the centerpiece. Now, in many people's homes, you got your settee set up, and you got your TV in the middle of your house, or not in the middle of your house, the middle of your living room or your sitting room, and it's like the centerpiece. Yeah, you probably got a 50-inch, a 60-inch. You might be humble with a 32-inch, a 24-inch, but this is the centerpiece in most houses. Yeah. And this is the biggest projector of images. This tells people what to be, how to act, how to respond, etc. You know? And yeah, we had physical images back then, you know, but now we have spiritual images. In terms of, the Bible is saying don't worship inanimate objects, but now we have the manifestation of objects, i.e. we have idols, pop idols. Back in the day there was inanimate idols. Now we have pop idols, where people want to be like their pop idol, you know? And they say that emulation is the highest form of worship. Emulation is the highest form of worship. We're supposed to be emulating the ways of the Most High. You know, learning what, you know, how to best conform to His image and not our own. Before I speak with some people, I know the image they worship by the image they have of themselves. So before I talk to, and this is me being real, like before I talk to some people, they don't even have to open their mouth to me, you know. I can kind of, by God's grace, with his discernment, I can kind of gauge, not all the time, but you can kind of gauge the images that people worship by the images that they have of themselves. You know? Like with the Ali G video we did the other day, many images have been superimposed onto our community, and we are living out those images as if that is really who we are. That's somebody else's ideal of us that we're acting out as if it's our own. And you got a picture of a TV and it's giving out certain messages that are shown in images, and then people by default assimilate. Now Genesis 1:27 says, Yah created man in his own image, in the image of Yah created he him, male and female created he them. Okay, we're gonna get back shortly after the next few slides to the book of Jubilees. Now again, this isn't I don't, because a lot, like I said, man, some people are very dogmatic one way and very liberal another way. So this is not to throw TV under the bus. You can still learn from TV, documentaries, etc. But what I'm saying is, I can kind of know what a person's been watching just by the way they present themselves. I can kind of tell what a person has been exposed to just by the way they present themselves, you know? I won't get into it, but you can see the pictures, and the pictures speak, or the images, yeah, speak for themselves. The images speak for themselves. So I know if you've been watching a lot of Kim Kardashian by the way you're trying to present yourself. And I know this, that, and the other, and yada, yada, yada. Fill in the blank. All right, let's go. Last point. The Most High used imagery to present truth to the king of Babylon, but he perverted it for his own self-service. We still use this image today to convey the truth, howbeit not the perverted version. So we know that the Most High gave him a dream of an idol which had various departments or compartments on the statue: gold, silver, bronze, iron and clay. But then he tried to just engulf it as gold. Yeah? Just showing you that to show that even the Most High will use imagery to communicate truth to us. But we can still, by freedom of choice, pervert the blessing that the Most High has given to us. So if somebody did a PowerPoint presentation like we're doing now, you know, and it's got images in there, do you freak out? Or like we said earlier, what is the purpose of it? Is it to worship, or is it to teach? And that's why we need to use a bit of discernment and not sound like we've gone back crazy, you know? Okay. Oh snap! One more thing. Okay, let me just read this one out. Last one from Wisdom of Solomon, I believe. Yeah, we go back to Jubilees after. Okay, Wisdom of Solomon 14:22 to 29. Moreover, this was not enough for them, talking about the idolatry. They erred in the knowledge of Yah. But whereas they lived in the great war of ignorance, those so great plagues they called peace. For whilst they slew their children in sacrifices, or used secret ceremonies, or made revealings of strange rites, often attached to these statues, ornaments, you know, like for example, if you go back to here, with the Mary, with this, you know, people will literally go to see this statue, put money to this statue, give bread to this statue, food to this statue. But back in the day, people would sacrifice their children to the statue, do crazy practices to get the statue's approval. You know, Baal, Tammuz, all these different so-called deities that would try to please them. Molech, you know, and that's where graven imagery leads to, evidently. But all right, let's finish off. So he says, for whilst they slew their children in the sacrifices or used secret ceremonies or made revealings of strange rites, Wisdom of Solomon 14:23, they kept neither lives nor marriages any longer undefiled, but either one slew another traitorously or grieved him by adultery, so that there reigned in all men without exception blood, manslaughter, theft, dissimulation, corruption, unfaithfulness, tumults, and perjury. Disquieting of good men, forgetfulness of good turns, defiling of souls, changing of kind. You know that Molech and what's his name? The other thing that people, what is his name now? Oh, I can't remember. But you know, they're gender fluid deities, oftentimes, meaning they've got female pieces and they've got a male piece. But that's another thing we'll look into another time. Disorder in marriages, adultery, and shameless uncleanness. One of the biggest idol things that we do, which is sanitized as so-called Christian, is Christmas. There's a lot of disorders in marriages, a lot of adultery, there's a lot of shameless uncleanness, yeah? And we know that Christmas, no matter how people want to spin it, it's not about Yeshua's birthday, it's winter solstice. You go back before that, it's Saturnalia. You go back before that, it's a day in honor of Nimrod, etc., etc. And incidentally, it was all to do with Nimrod dying and then becoming born again. Yes, we see little parallels of death and worship and etc., etc. Now he says, for the worshipping of idols, in verse 27, for the worshipping of idols not to be named is the beginning, the cause, and the end of all evil. For either they are mad when they be merry, or prophesy lies, or live unjustly, or else lightly forswear themselves. For in so much as they trust in idols, which have no life, though they swear falsely, yet they look not to be hurt. So we see that the worshipping of idols is actually literally, you know what I'm saying? It's a worship and it's paying homage to inanimate objects or even animate objects. Yeah, so idolatry goes above, or graven imagery goes above beyond what it was. You know, like when Hamashiach came, there were certain laws like adultery. You know, adultery had to be a physical act. But when the Hamashiach came, he says, if you think adultery, that's adultery. Likewise, murder, if you think to kill your brother without a cause, it's murder. Likewise, with graven imagery, it goes above now just the graven. You can have mental graven images that you deify and worship. And I hope you guys don't deify and worship any images that are put out. So you have Molech there, and somebody offering their child to Molech. And then the modern equivalency of Molech today would probably be Planned Parenthood, where people willingly abort their children out of convenience, out of misdirection, etc., etc., you know? All right, let's get back to the book of Jubilees. Like I said, this is the introduction to Jubilees. We're just looking at chapter 1, and we're going here and there for precepts to establish the book of Jubilees. Okay. Who did the Most High scatter Israel amongst? And I will hide my face from them, and I will deliver them into the hand of the Gentiles for captivity, and for a prey, and for devouring, and I will remove from them the mist of the land, and I will scatter them amongst the Gentiles. So the Israelites were to be scattered amongst the Gentiles in captivity. What will Israel forget? And they will forget my law and all my commandments, all my judgments, and will go astray as to the new moons and Sabbaths and festivals and jubilees and ordinances. And after this, they will turn to me from amongst the Gentiles with all their heart and with all their soul and with all their strength, and I will gather them from among the Gentiles, and they will seek me, so that I shall be found of them when they seek me with all their heart and with all their soul. And I will disclose to them a pound in peace with righteousness, and I will remove them, and I will remove them the plant of uprightness with all my heart and with all my soul, and they shall be a blessing and not for a curse. And they shall be the head and not the tail. And I will build my sanctuary in the midst, and I will dwell with them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people in truth and righteousness. So Israel was going to forget the commandments, but the Most High was going to reinstall them with the commandments in their heart, so that they would not be would no longer be a curse, but would be a blessing. No longer be the tail, but they would be the head. What prophecy made Moses tremble? Jubilees chapter 1 verse 17 to 18, 17 to 18. And I will not forsake them, nor fail them, for I am the Lord their God. And Moses fell on his face and prayed and said, O Lord my God, do not forsake thy people and thy inheritance, so that they should wander in the error of their hearts. And do not deliver them into the hands of their enemies, the Gentiles, lest they should rule over them and cause them to sin against thee. Jeremiah 16 verse 19. O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction, the Gentiles shall come, so they haven't came yet, unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. And we know that. So what prophecy made Moses tremble? It was the prophecy of going into slavery. Moses, this is the thing, this is the beauty. He saw all of this back then. He had the pre-knowledge. He saw it visually. It was broken down to him, explained to him, expounded to him what was going to happen to his people. Jubilees 119 to 21. Let thy mercy, O Lord, be lifted upon thy people, and create in them an upright spirit, and let not the spirit of Beliar rule over them, to cause them before thee, and to ensnare them from all the paths of righteousness, so that they may perish from before thy face. But they are thy people, and thy inheritance, which thou hast delivered with great power from the hands of the Egyptians. Create in them a clean heart and a holy spirit, and let them not be ensnared in their sins from henceforth until eternity. And the Lord said unto Moses, I know their contrariness, and their thoughts, and their stiff-neckedness, and they will not be obedient till they confess their own sin and the sin of their fathers. Now some people are like, what? How come you have to confess your sin and the sin of your fathers? That don't make no sense. I mean, the Bible don't say that. The Bible don't say you need to confess the sins of your father. That's ridiculous. Let's see. Yah's people often prayed for the ignorance of their fathers. Psalms 106 verse 6. We have sinned with our fathers. We have committed iniquity. We have done wickedly. Listen to the language, Listen to the language of David, the psalmist, Uncle David, He said this, Did he say this? I have sinned with my fathers. I have committed iniquity. I have done wickedly. He said we, collectively. We, you, me, I, her, him, them, us, listening now. We have sinned with our fathers. We have committed iniquity. We have done wickedly. None is righteous, none, not one. A lot of times I hear people saying, boy, everyone's got this finger pointing thing going on within Yasharao. And I'm like, boy, if only we learned how to pray with we instead of me. Or we instead of I. Even Hamashiach says, our Father, which art in heaven. Including, you know what I'm saying? Getting integral with the people them, He didn't say my Father, which he had every right to say. He said our Father, and that should be our response too. But I digress. Jeremiah, we acknowledge, O Lord, our wickedness and the iniquity of our fathers. We have sinned against thee. Not, oh, Kirsty did that. Rita did that. Senorita did that. John and Eddie did that. But we, collectively, there was a saying, I can't remember what the saying is now. Mine just went. All right, Daniel 9 verse 8. O Lord, to us belongeth the confusion of face, to our kings, to our princes, and to our fathers, because we have sinned against thee. Lamentations. Their fathers, that tribe, sinned. That Judah tribe sinned. Their fathers. And then Benjamite tribe, they sinned. Their fathers. No. Our fathers have sinned and are not. And we have borne their iniquity. No, not our fathers. Them Ephraim people, not us. Nah, man, the Israel, the one that went up, the 10 that, them guys. Not Judah and Benjamin and Levi. God, y'all forbid. Not us. Just them guys. Them darker complexion Hebrews. It was them. No. It was the lighter complexion Hebrews. It was them. Nah, man. Nah. It was them Hebrews that stutter. Nah, man. It was them Hebrews that are wow eloquent. Nah, it's them African Hebrews, man. Nah, it was them American. Nah, it was the Brazilian Hebrews. They just said collectively, we have our fathers. This is called ownership. This is called accountability. This is called responsibility. If my children, which I'm trying to get them to this point, and they're slowly getting there, actually now they're kind of there still. When they do something wrong, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes my daughter will say, Dad, we're sorry. I'm thinking, oh, all right. Now I've got a boy and I've got a girl, I've got a son and I've got a daughter, yeah? But my daughter will say, Dad, we're sorry. We shouldn't have done that. So she's taking the ownership of her brother too, because she's the oldest as well. So that's what she does. She'll say, we did this, we're sorry. And I look at that as a child saying that to me as a dad. And I'm like, wow, that's very mature, Because you could have done that Adam and Eve. Adam said, oh man, you know what though? Yeah, it was the, you know what? Most High, it's your fault because you gave me Eve, and then it's Eve's fault because Eve did this. And then Eve said, oh, it was a serpent's fault, it tricked me. But none of them said, cha, you know what? I saw the fruit, it looked good, and boy, I took a bite. And then, and Adam didn't say, boy, Eve, she came at me, she was looking good, it was a hot day, melanated, glistening, and she gave me the apple, and I said, cha, boy, I eat the apple, yada, yada, yada. No one took accountability, responsibility. It was sort of like a diversion or, deflection mechanism. But we see here from three different authors, Uncle David, Uncle Jeremiah, Uncle Daniel, saying, we sinned, we acknowledge our fathers, yada, yada, yada. And it's something that we could learn by, and it's something that we could definitely implement. Okie dokie, karaoke. Hopefully we're good for time, Okay. So, after they turn back, what is promised? And after this, they will turn to me in uprightness, and with all their heart, and with all their soul, and I will circumcise the foreskin of their heart, and the foreskin of their heart, and the foreskin of the heart of their seed. Whoa. And I will circumcise the foreskin of their heart, and the foreskin of the heart of their seed, prosperity, not prosperity gospel. I'm on about prosperity, your kids, your children. And I will create in them a Holy Spirit, and I will cleanse them so that they shall not turn away from me from that day unto eternity. And their souls will cleave to me unto all my commandments, and they will fulfill my commandments, and I will be their father, and they will be my children. And they all shall be called children of the living Yahuwah, and every angel and every spirit shall know, yea, they shall know that these are my children. Woo! Wow. And that I am their father in uprightness, righteousness, and that I love them. Boy, let's rewind. And they all shall be called children of the living Yahuwah, and every angel, every spirit shall know, yea, they shall know that these are my children. This reminds me of, like, you're out on road, you go into the shop, and then somebody stops you and says, oh, your children look lovely. And you say, yeah, man, these are my children, That's my son, deso, and that's my daughter, deso. And they're my children. You feel proud, It says there, the angels are going to know. The spirits are going to know that these are my people. This is me. I am Abba Father to them, and they are my children. Hallelujah. Let's continue. And they all should be called children of the living. No, we just read that. Oh, sorry. Did I read that? Oh, yeah, I did. And do thou write down for thyself all these words which I declare unto thee on this mountain, the first and the last, which shall come to pass in all the divisions of the days in the law and in the testimony, and in the weeks and the jubilees unto eternity, until I descend and dwell with them throughout eternity. Let's read that again. This is prophetic now. And do thou write down for thyself all these words. So this is Moses, I believe, writing now still. And he's getting shown panoramically the past and the future. The Genesis creation to the return of the Hamashiach. And he says, do thou write down for thyself all these words which I declare unto thee on this mountain, the first and the last, Alpha and Omega, which shall come to pass in all the divisions of the days in the law and in the testimony and in the weeks and the jubilees unto eternity, until I descend and dwell with them throughout eternity. Wow. And he said to the angel of the presence, write for Moses from the beginning of creation till my sanctuary has been built among them for all eternity. And the Lord will appear to the eyes of all, and all shall know that I am the God of Israel. Let's read that again. I am the God of the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Perizzites, the Lililites. No. It says, and the Lord will appear to the eyes of all, And all shall know that I am the Yahuwah of Israel, and the father of all the children of the Moabites, the Hammonites, the Girgashites, and the father of all the children of Jacob, and the king on Mount Zion for all eternity, and Zion and Jerusalem and Jerusalem shall be holy. Okay, so the Most High wants to be our what? Our Father, and this is a prophecy of the future when the Most High, 25 and 27. Interesting. So let me read that again. And the Lord will appear. The Lord will appear to the eyes of all, and all shall know that I am the God of Israel, and the Abba of all the children of Jacob, and the King on Mount Zion for all eternity, and Zion and Jerusalem shall be holy. Now, how much was revealed to Moses, and who by? How much was revealed to Moses, or Moshe, and who by? Jubilees 1:28. And the angel of presence, who went before the camp of Israel, took the tables of divisions of the years from the time of creation of the law and of the testimony of the weeks of Jubilees, according to the individual years, according to all the numbers of Jubilees, according to the individual years, from the day of the new creation, when the earth is made new, when the heavens and the earth shall be renewed, and all the creation according to the powers of heaven, and according to all the creation of the earth, until the sanctuary of the Lord shall be made in Jerusalem on Mount Zion, and all the luminaries be renewed for their healing and for peace, and for blessing for all the elect of Israel, and that thus it may be from that day and unto all the days of the earth. So it says, until the sanctuary of the Lord shall be made in Jerusalem on Mount Zion. Another precept for that, Hebrews 12:22. But ye are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels. So Moshe saw from the Alpha, the beginning, and he saw all the way to the Omega, the end. He saw how the world was set up and framed, and he saw all the way to the end of days, and to the creation of the new world to come. Oh, so how much was revealed to Moses? The Alpha and Omega, top to the bottom. And who was it told, and who by? So who told him? The angel of presence. And the angel of presence who went before the camp of Israel, took the tables, etc., etc. So the angel of presence was the one who gave the revelation or the information to Moshe. Now let's see a precept to back that. Exodus 23 verse 20. Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions. My name is in him. But if thou shalt indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy unto thine enemies and an adversary unto thine adversaries. For my angel shall go before thee and bring thee unto the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, Jebusites, and I will cut them off. Thou shalt not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do after their works, but thou shalt utterly overthrow them, and quite break down their images. So there's a work of cleansing and breaking down images that happened during this time in Exodus. Interesting. And I've shared that scripture to collaborate this scripture about the angel of presence that has the Most High's name in him that we see in Exodus also. Yeah, so there's the precept, there's the harmony, good to go. And we see that the last thing it says there, thou shalt not bow down to their gods, graven images, nor serve them, nor do works, nor do after their works like Molech and Baal, sacrificing children to Baal and Molech and this, that, the other, all these different graven images. But thou shalt utterly overthrow them. So it's supposed to delete them, erase them, break them, and quite break down their images. Interesting. Now, almost finished. So we see at the moment we have physical idols, like in the temple of the Philistines, I believe, and they had the Dagon statue, and its head fell off when it was placed next to the Ark of the Covenant. There are physical idols, that people hold dear to. Physical things. Let me think of some. A car, a house, whatever, a hobby or whatever, fill in the blanks. Then there's mental idols, yeah, that people have ingrained, embedded into the psyche that they find difficult to let go, shake, because then their whole worldview, their whole concept will then be challenged, and it will leave them a bit uncomfortable. And also, there's just a lot of money attached to falsehood, If you had to rebrand certain things to fit how it should look historically, geographically, scripturally, a lot of people will lose money. A lot of things would devalue because you put in a certain, look to it. Paradigms would change, cultural shift would change. And obviously those who peddle lies are reluctant to forsake it. Also, Yeshua saith in John 14 verse 9, Yeshua saith unto him, have I been so long with you, yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that hath seen me hath seen the Father, and how sayest thou then, show us the Father? Now some people will look at this and they'll generally look at it in one way. They'll say, I was talking spiritually, symbolically, metaphorically. They'll say every Lee under the sun, but they'll never say physically. Yeah? As if like when Hamashiach was on the earth, he was just a ghost or a spectre. He didn't have no body, he didn't have no appearance, But Philip was like, I believe what you're saying, but show me the Father. Like, what does the Father look like? Like, how can I see the Father? And he says, if you've seen me, then you've seen the Father. Yeah? And then if we've seen Adam, we've seen the Father also, because Adam was made in Yah's image. Very interesting. Now, when I searched for this particular scripture, John 14 verse 9, in the search browser that I was searching in, this image came up. Where it says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And there's a guy looking in the mirror, seeing a Japhetic Edomite with a beard and trimming and all this kind of stuff, and saying, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. That's what came up, yeah? And I was like, rah, interesting. Now, Corinthians 10 verse 4 says, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. So we're not going to win this by a carnal mind. But it says, but mighty through Yah to the pulling down of strongholds. The only thing that pulls down strongholds is the truth. The truth will set you free. That's the thing that pulls down the strongholds. Not the arguing, not the debating, etc., etc. I put something on my community feed the other day of a illustration of a child in Africa, and he's holding a portrait of something, of an image of Yahweh Shai or Yeshua, yeah? And the amount of slack that I had to just like, this is why I like the community feed as well, you know. It's a good way to kind of, to purge out trolls and to purge out Boule and to purge out Uncle Tom, not Uncle Tom's, Uncle Sambo's, you know. Because I guarantee if I were to put this image, no one would really have an image with this, have an issue with this, because it's a universal image, you know. People say, oh, you know, they have no issue. But because I put a little African boy with an image, with a historical, geographical, you know, even police, when you're doing when you catch somebody for a crime and you do a sketch, there's a sketch artist that gives a copy or does an illustration based on the evidence. Now, there's evidences in the Bible to suggest a certain appearance, but what we get is this falsehood, yeah? And when you go against this falsehood, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable because there's a lot of things attached to it, monetarily, prestige, value, white supremacy, Christianity, all these kinds of things are attached to it, you know? So it makes a lot of people uncomfortable and they tend to shoot it down rather than taking any heed to it, and the mental monopoly that it has on some people. But alright then, I've had enough of me talking. I'm going to play a short video clip. But before I play that short video clip, I want to read this one here. It says, and they left their images, and David and his men burned them. Yeah, they left their images, and David and his men burned them. I'm going to play this short clip, and then I'm going to come back to you very quickly, and then the study's more or less done.
Right, I doubt very much.
There you go.
And I saw in one of your social media postings, you say, you know, you'll start the decolonizing process for yourself by doing away with the white image of Jesus Christ.
As of this weekend, actually, I'm banning the white Jesus myself.
Yeah.
I'm not asking anybody else to do it.
Yes.
But I woke up one morning having worked as a minister for 32 years.
Yes.
And you wake up to discover the picture of Jesus is wrong.
Yeah.
It's actually a whitewashed Hollywood picture. And I don't believe that white guy ever died for any one of us. So that's for me.
Yes.
I don't know what the rest of the community would say, but for myself, that's wrong. The name Jesus on its own is wrong.
Yeah.
Because the letter J only appeared on our alphabet as of 500 years ago. So even Jesus himself, per se, Yeshua, never had that name being called on him. Then I wake up again and discover the Bible has been edited. There are a couple of books that are missing in the Bible. Another problem. Israel itself becomes another problem, because they never went anywhere in a boat and they were never sold as slaves anywhere. As the Bible identifies the Israelites, that they were going to be taken across the seas, they're going to be beaten up, and they're going to be thrown around with buttocks hanging outside, they'll be sold as slaves. Now tell me which nation on the face of the earth fits that description, except for the black people. So when you begin to look at the biblical text more critically, you begin to see the whole colonial facade falling off, that actually the 13th tribe, a book which I can recommend, which was done by Ford, must be read, that the whole concept of the Hebraic Israeli concept, that the Israel are these white guys who are rolling their hands on their side, is not altogether true. The whites have never been Jewish. For all practical purposes, North Africa is not a home for the white people. They have been Europeans. It's only when they went through the civilizations in Europe and into Russia and etc., when they came back through the United Nations in the 1960s, then a state was established, but there's no trace.
Well, obviously that is going to cause serious political
That's why we're
challenges
debating.
to you.
That's why we're
Of course,
debating.
People will challenge you and say, you've got it all wrong, it's distorted history.
Now, okay. So that was very interesting. You can see a lot of people are waking up to the deception, and the deception is around images. Yeah, images are very, very powerful. Hence why we've been told that images are evil and to forsake images. Now, like we looked at earlier, there is a thin line between image worship and just there being an image. You know, like we looked at with the books, the textbooks. If your son came home with the textbooks or textbook with an image of a skeleton, and he's doing, I don't know, he's doing, I don't know, you know, he's a doctor. My mind went blank, you know. But your son comes home with a textbook on, you know, the anatomy, the body, this, that, the other, and you see an image of a person, will you freak out and go crazy and say, graven image, graven image? No, because hopefully you've got more clarity on what a graven image is, etc. But nevertheless, that can still be deified and turned into an idol if one chooses to turn that into an idol, if that makes sense. And hopefully it does, because we looked at that previously. Yeah? So I'm not saying I'm trying to get people to do no idolatry, graven images, but I'm trying to get people to understand that having an image on a book, or if you go into someone's house and there's a flower on the wall, or you go into someone's bathroom and there's a fish, like a, you know, some people like to have aqua stuff on there, you know what I'm trying to say. You can get a bit ridiculous, you know. You can turn a bit doolally if you're going to deal with it like that. Now, if you go to someone's house and you see an image, or someone gives you a textbook and you worship the textbook, and you know, you laminate the textbook, put gold trimming on the textbook, light a candle to the textbook, bow down to the textbook, kill people for the textbook, then there's an issue with you and not the textbook. You with me? But anyway, on the issue of imagery and false imagery and the connection that it has to the mental state and the deception, First Maccabees 1:3 to First Maccabees chapter 3 verse 48. I had another image which was a lot more powerful, and you would have seen it in more detail, but I just had to grab this quickly off the internet while you was watching that the short clip. So it says, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. Yeah. So imagery has always been a powerful thing. Imagery. Hence why most imagery of so-called Negroes is very negative. And we then see that as our image, and we fulfill that, not knowing that we were made in the image of Yahuwah, and we, male and female, were made to be like him mentally, physically, and spiritually, you know? But because of all these false images, we don't know who we are. And as a result, we emulate what we see. John 8 verse 31. Then said Yeshua to those Jews which believed on him, if, conditional, you continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed. And you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Notice there's a condition. I'm guilty sometimes of saying, and you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. But there's a condition to being free. There's a continuation. There's a perseverance that has to take place also. Then said Yeshua to the Jews that believed on him, if, it's up to you, you continue, it's up to you, then ye are my disciples indeed. Notice it don't say you are my Christians indeed. I don't have any religious semantic in there. Just a disciple, a learner. Then ye are my disciples indeed, because a disciple is a learner, and you're continuing to learn in the word of the Most High Yahuwah. So it says, then said Yeshua to those Jews which believed on him, if you continue in my word, then you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Last verse of the Jubilees, and we're done. And then we're going to look at next Sabbath, chapter 2. Yeah, so this is just a short introduction. Well, it's not short, but it's an introduction into Jubilees. Okay, Jubilees chapter 2 verse 1. And the angel of presence spake to Moses according to the word of the Lord, saying, write the complete history of the creation, how in 6 days the Lord God finished all the works and all that he created, and kept the Sabbath on the 7th day, and hallowed it for all ages, and appointed it as a sign for all his works. I hope you found this interesting, and as always, provoking thought.